Number 5. The Night of the Hunter, 1955. Charles Laughton's The Night of the Hunter is a whirling pictorial dervish, as well as a beautiful dramatic fable about a brother and a sister. Set in the Dust Bowl era, America is in the clinches of the Depression, but this here is no history lesson. No, this is a tale of two children, weakened and pursued by hysterical religiosity and the ignorance of the adult world. Clearly a work of awe and evil, of enchantment and horror, The Night of the Hunter is one of those unshakable cinematic experiences that was misunderstood in its day but in the years since has been declared a masterwork. An opiate-addled fairy tale for grown-ups from the perspective of off-course and unloved children, Laughton together with legendary cinematographer Stanley Cortez, strove for and achieved a merger of German expressionism and film noir composite. The results? It's a work that is overflowing with high contrast, jagged angles, strange shadows, distorted perspectives, and startling, surrealistic sets. The resulting distortion of reality works flawlessly to exaggerate the emotional on-screen experience. An atmosphere of browbeaten dread and mounting terror overwhelms and transforms The Night of the Hunter into a surrealist standard. The plot is simple. Reverend Harry Powell, Robert Mitchum, is a religious fanatic who becomes a full-blown serial killer who targets the widow, Shelley Winters, of a petty thief he did some time with. Soon Willa's two children, John, Billy Chapin, and Pearl, Sally Jane Bruce, must escape Harry before it's too late. Thick with nocturnal panic, The Night of the Hunter preys on things like our childlike fears of the dark, and the adult assertion of cruelty and persecution. A chilling tour de force you'll never forget. Shelley Winters, strapped to her car and floating amongst seaweeds, is one of cinema's most unsettling tableaus, almost beautiful if it weren't so brutal. Number 4. Blue Velvet, 1986. Entrenched with seeming innocence in small-town America, David Lynch's darkly disturbing Blue Velvet courts controversy as much as it parades sickness and sadism. Beneath the well-manicured lawns and white picket fences of Lynchian Middle America, in this case the idyllic bliss of Lumberton, there lurks horror, hurt, danger and death. Jeffrey Beaumont, Kyle MacLachlan, and Sandy Williams, Laura Dern, are naive youngsters. A romantic tension builds between them, but so does a mystery as they do some amateurs sleuthing in their sleepy little town. Jeffrey has returned to Lumberton from college, owing to his father's recent stroke, and he's barely back in town before he makes a startling discovery: a severed human ear in the field near his father's hospital. His curiosity, arguably unhealthy, soon finds him embroiled in the life of put-upon lounge singer Dorothy Valens, Isabella Rossellini, whose husband and child have been taken hostage by wolfish psychopath Frank Booth, Dennis Hopper, in what might well be his most memorable and menacing role. One of Blue Velvet's most memorable scenes finds Jeffrey hiding in Dorothy's closet, a perverse peeping Tom. He witnesses Frank's savagery firsthand and is powerless to intervene. As far as on-screen voyeurism and indicting us as spectators to the crime is concerned, Blue Velvet is a masterclass and arguably Lynch's finest and most unforgettable film. Number 3. Silence of the Lambs, 1991. I go to the cinema because I feel like being shocked, said Silence of the Lambs director Jonathan Demme while doing the press junket for the film, and that's as good a mantra as any for Silence of the Lambs when considering the Freudian context, the atmospheric dread, the upsetting camera angles and the unnerving and artfully articulated manifestation of evil that permeates every frame of this monstrous procedural, serial killer thriller. While it's Ted Levine's terrifying James Gumb aka Buffalo Bill that first gets the FBI rookie Clarice Starling, Jodie Foster, on the case, it's her encounters with Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins, in an iconic performance, in the windowless basement confines of the high-security mental hospital that may be the most memorable aspects of this nightmarish motion picture. A cinematic high point for American film of the 1990s. The dual psychopaths at the center of this film are unforgettable human monsters, and the closing line of Lecter about having a friend for dinner may be the most ghoulish coda in history. To call it chilling may well be an understatement. Number 2. Psycho, 1960. From the shrill violins punctuating Bernard Herrmann's distinguished and unforgettable score to Anthony Perkins' momentous turn as the amiable and all too charming Norman Bates and all the creeping build-ups to unforeseen shocks along the precarious way, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is easily the most influential horror film in history. The first ever splatter film, Psycho set the template for the slasher subgenre while gleefully breaking every rule in the book as far as upsetting audience expectation at every turn. Toppling romantic principles straight away, Psycho opens on Marion Crane, Janet Leigh, an alluring and likable young woman who is stealing $40 from her boss and having an illicit affair with a married man to boot. Not exactly morally upstanding, Marion is still sympathetically rendered and wholly engaging, good-natured even. But before too long she finds herself seeking refuge at the Bates Motel and taking the most famous and ill-advised shower ever photographed. And old Hitch pulls the carpet out from under us as a half-hour into the movie the pleasing protagonist is massacred most ferociously, forcing us to suddenly identify with an accomplice we just can't be too sure of. What the heck, Hitchcock? You're totally breaking all the rules and manipulating us like a pitiable plaything. The now emblematic Bates house was inspired by Edward Hopper's Americana paintings. Details of the crimes had their genesis in real-life Wisconsin serial killer Ed Gein's atrocities, all indicating that Hitchcock was perforating the American psyche and subconscious. Family relations, sex, madness, and bloody murder rest at the bosom of one of Hitchcock's greatest and grittiest works. Psycho isn't just the nativity of modern horror, it's also the recognition and acceptance of it. Number 1. The Vanishing, 1988. George Sluizer's Dutch chiller, that he'd later remake for American audiences, with Sandra Bullock no less, and don't bother watching it, it's not good owing to a detestable Hollywood ending, is a tightly wound, harrowing ordeal that's full of surprises and near-bottomless chills. Adapted from Tim Crabb's novella The Golden Egg, The Vanishing fixes its bleak gaze upon the disappearance of Saskia Wagner, Johanna Terstege, a young woman last seen at a service station with her boyfriend, Rex Hoffman, Jean Bervowitz, while on vacay in France. Soon it becomes Rex's obsession to discover the fate of Saskia, and as the years go by, his idea fix becomes all-consuming, and shockingly, his troubles have only begun. The Vanishing's uncompromising finale boosts it into the upper echelon of Hitchcockian horror to be sure, but the film as a whole also functions as a masterclass in unsettling moments and slowly ratcheting terror as Rex hunts the slyest of serial killer. An intellectual thriller of this ilk is rare, that it conjures equal measures of cursory family life and detached doom with such shrewd elegance, resulting in one of the most ferocious climaxes of any film ever, buoys The Vanishing into the sinister celestial. So much so that Stanley Kubrick famously and enthusiastically said to Sluizer that he'd watched his film 3 times, adding, "It was the most horrifying film I've ever seen."